Before I put this Philco 60 on the back burner, I thought I would take a quick attempt at sprucing up the cabinet a little bit. This top was really bad. So what I did is I grabbed some Howard's Restore Finish mahogany, soaked a bit into some steel wool, and now I'm rubbing it on. And it's a bit surprised that it's actually not that bad. What I thought was a really faded finish, it's actually just a lot of dirt. So I'm gonna keep rubbing it for a while and see if I can get this paint off and this ring here, and if I can, well, who knows. Try it around here too, where there's all this dirt built up from people turning the knobs for many years, I imagine. Well, maybe I can get this off too, so maybe this cabinet won't need to be completely stripped and refinished. I was poking around online trying to find an example of this particular model, and I couldn't. All I was finding was the tabletop model, which seems to be far more common. What I did find, though, at philcoradio.com was a Model 91L, which turns out is exactly the same cabinet. And the picture they have of it looks phenomenal. Somebody did a really nice job of refinishing it. Especially like here with this diagonal veneer. It looked really good. So I'll spruce it up with this Howard's and see if I get mine looking a little bit better. I've been at it for 15 minutes and it's definitely coming along. I was able to get the paint off, and I'm working on this ring. I think it will come out more or less, but it's going to take a lot of rubbing. There's also a scratch running through here that there's really nothing I can do about without refinishing this. Likewise, these scratches here and these dark stains seem to have penetrated down to the wood below, so can't take care of those, but certainly a lot better than it was. Also started doing a little bit on the front here like I did this side, and it's definitely looking a lot better now. And it turns out that this is actually masking tape. So I'm going to try to use some water or maybe some mild solvents, mineral spirits and such to get that off. And I'll pull the chassis out and remove this escutcheon to do this area. But yeah, it's definitely, here, I'll give you a quick demo here. So like here on this fluting, see these, there's chips where the finish is gone here. If you rub the Howard's on it, just like that, and they disappear. Now there's really no lacquer there, it's just bare wood exposed. So what this is doing is actually there's some pigment in this Howard's, and it's actually lightly staining the wood, which is what makes it disappear. But hey, certainly a hell of a lot faster and easier than stripping this down and refinishing it. Now Howard's will fade after time. It looks pretty good now because it's wet, but this will, well, you need to wipe off the residue, and then this, after a few days or weeks, this will fade. So what you need to do is use wax, which they actually say on the can to do. They recommend, of course, their own brand of wax, which is, oh, there it is, Howard Feed-N Wax, which is beeswax and orange oil, I believe. I've used it before, it works pretty well. So once I finish going over this whole thing, and I'll let it dry out for a couple days, and I'll apply the Howard Feed-N Wax. To get into these nooks and crannies down here, what I'm doing is using a brush to clean out the dust and dirt as best I can, load out with some compressed air, and then I'm simply dipping a brush into the Howard's and just paint it on, and then after a few minutes mop up the excess. I'll remove the grill cloth to do all this area. This isn't the original cloth anyways, and I'm going to be replacing it with something more appropriate. There is a reproduction available that's the exact pattern that they used back in '35, I think, when this was made. And same in this fluting here where I couldn't quite get into before when I was using the steel wool. Now, if you don't have any Howard's Restore finish, something else you can use is Old English furniture oil. The label fell off, but trust me, that's what this is. And you can do the same thing with a brush and paint it into all the nooks and crannies and then wipe up the excess. And of course, you can use this on the whole thing. After all, it is furniture oil. But because it has no pigment, where you've got nicks and dings like here, it's not going to make them fade away like the Howard's does. But you can also wipe stain on this. Like get some Minwax, a walnut stain, and you wipe it on, let it dry, and then put the oil on over that too. And or furniture wax works well too. But what I especially like is when you use this to get into nooks and crannies with a brush, because you can really get out all that dust and grime. I kept working away at this top with the steel wool and the Howard's Restore finish. And here's the final results. I think it came out pretty good. I even went back over those areas where before I'd said there were some dark stains I wouldn't be able to get out, and I got them out. The ring, just about got it all out, but this was stained pretty badly, and some of it's in there pretty deep, and I just won't be able to get it all out unless I strip this top. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results. So now that it's been a while and it's dried out, what I'm going to do is put on some of the feeding wax, which like I said is beeswax and orange oil. Gotta shake it up really good to get the wax dissolved and good with the orange oil. And you put it on with a rag, you let it sit for 20 minutes and then buff it out with a clean cloth. Here's what it looks like, kind of a gooey yellow substance. Work it into the cloth a bit, and then you simply wipe it on. I always go with the grain. Make sure it gets worked in there real good. And here we are after buffing out the wax. Not bad for a few hours work. Now, it is a bit rough, unfortunately, and there's really two ways to deal with that. One is to, of course, strip it down and refinish the whole thing. Two, I could use some paint thinner, mineral spirits, and remove all the wax and oil that I just put on here, and put a few clear coats of lacquer, sand it, a few more coats, and so on to retain the original patina and so on, but make this smooth again, which is probably what I'll do, but sometime down the road, maybe next year. So a little bit more work to do on the rest of the cabinet, and then I'll show you what the final results are. And here's the final results. It turned out quite nicely, I think. What I did for the legs down here is I took a rag, soaked it in some oil and wax, wrapped it around, grabbed it in either hand, and rubbed it back and forth, which shined it up nicely. The only things that didn't come out so well were the rings around here and here, which are the volume and tuning, which not surprisingly are the knobs that were used most often. So plenty of wear around here. At the base of each leg, the feet, they've lost pretty much all their finish. So they really should have some new lacquer applied to them to protect the wood. And unfortunately over on this side there is a chip of veneer gone. It's separating a little bit, and there's a nasty gouge in here and a scratch here. But otherwise, not too bad. Not too bad at all for something that's nearly 80 years old. Now there's plenty of debate about whether or not you should refinish old things. Technically, I believe an antique is something that's over 100 years old, and this is only 77 years old. I think for the time being I'll leave it. I may go over it later and touch it up with just clear coating over this to try to preserve the original patina. By way of comparison, here's a very similar Philco 70 that's actually a little bit older. This one, somebody stripped it down, stain, decals, everything, and then just clear coated it with polyurethane without using any stain or toner or anything. And as you can see, it's considerably lighter. It's very rough because they didn't use any grain filler, and it's lost all its charm, I think. So this I will someday refinish and try to stain it to actually make it look like this. But this, you know, I know I've been doing a number of videos lately on refinishing stuff, but I am all in favor of preserving the old finish when it's in good shape. To recap, here's the products I used. Howard's Restore Finish with some walnut pigment in it. And this is this is Old English lemon oil. And this is Howard's Feed and Wax, which is beeswax and orange oil. So I hope you found these tips useful, and maybe you can help preserve an old cabinet too.